Hey everyone, Brandon here from Trucksafe Consulting. Chameleons, the reptiles that is, are known for their ability to change their physical appearance to blend into their surroundings. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, which is primarily responsible for regulating highway safety, has ascribed similar characteristics to nefarious motor carriers who attempt to avoid the consequences of non-compliance by closing up shop and reincarnating under a different name or DOT number. These so-called chameleon carriers believe that by doing so, they'll start with a clean slate and leave their regulatory problems behind them. While this may have been a viable strategy in the past, it is no longer, as the Fmcsa has developed investigatory and enforcement processes to curb that practice. So what exactly is a chameleon carrier? That's the question we're answering in this video, so stay tuned and do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe button below if you find this type of content helpful. Unfortunately, the Fmcsa doesn't publish detailed statistics about chameleon carriers or its efforts to prosecute them. However, in a 2012 report to Congress, the Government Accountability Office, GAO, noted that the number of carriers with chameleon attributes increased from 759 in 2005 to 1,136 in 2010. It went on to explain that 18% of the applicants for operating authority with chameleon attributes were involved in severe crashes, compared with 6% of new applicants without chameleon attributes. Now, given the substantial rise in the number of DOT registration applications over the past few years, it wouldn't be a surprise to learn that the number of carriers with chameleon attributes has likewise risen significantly over that time frame. So what exactly is a chameleon carrier? Well, although the Fmcsa doesn't specifically define that term in its regulations, it has described them as carriers who submit new applications for registration, often under a new name, in order to continue operating after having been placed out of service for safety-related reasons, to avoid paying civil penalties, to circumvent denial of applications for operating authority based on a determination that they weren't fit, willing, or able to comply with the regulations, or to otherwise avoid a negative compliance history. Now, the dangers posed by so-called chameleon or reincarnated carriers, as they're sometimes called, were made apparent following a fatal bus crash in Sherman, Texas in 2008. The Fmcsa's investigation of that accident revealed that the carrier involved did not have active operating authority, but had an application for that authority pending with the agency. The company had been previously placed out of service due to safety-related defects and was in the process of applying under a new name to avoid the implications of that out-of-service order. Following that accident, the Fmcsa began vetting passenger and household goods carriers to determine whether they were reincarnations or affiliates of other motor carriers with negative compliance histories. Then in 2011, the agency codified its vetting procedures in a formal rulemaking aimed at prohibiting reincarnated or affiliated carriers from successfully evading accountability for their compliance history. In its chameleon carrier rulemaking, the Fmcsa explains the practice of reincarnating as a new carrier or of operating affiliated companies to circumvent agency enforcement actions and avoid a negative compliance history or enforcement action has created an unacceptable risk of harm to the public because it results in the continued operation of at-risk carriers and thwarts the Fmcsa's ability to carry out its safety mission. Accordingly, the Fmcsa now actively investigates and shuts down chameleon carriers. So how does the Fmcsa uncover chameleon carriers? Well, in its 2011 rulemaking, the Fmcsa established new processes for identifying and prosecuting chameleon carriers. 49 CFR 386.73 authorizes the agency to issue out-of-service orders to carriers determined to be reincarnated or operating as affiliates to avoid enforcement action or a negative compliance history. The rule also establishes procedures to consolidate the compliance records of reincarnated or affiliated entities, such that the negative compliance history is attached to any affiliated carriers being used for a quote-unquote improper purpose. In particular, that rule allows the Fmcsa to issue an out-of-service order or consolidate the US DOT records of any carrier who has operated or attempted to operate under a new identity or as an affiliated entity to either avoid complying with an Fmcsa order, avoid complying with a statutory or regulatory requirement, avoid paying a civil penalty, avoid responding to an enforcement action, or avoid being linked with a negative compliance history. Under the rule, FMCSA may determine that a carrier is reincarnated if there is a substantial continuity between the entities such that one is merely the continuation of the other. It may determine that a carrier is an affiliate if the business operations are under common ownership and/or common control. Now, in making this determination, the FMCSA considers various factors, including, for example, dates of the company creation and/or cessation, commonality of ownership, officers, management, drivers, or equipment, identity of mailing addresses, phone numbers, and emails, and continuity of operations or customers. The agency has explained that it weeds out potential chameleon carriers by leveraging its various electronic databases to automatically scan for similarities among new and existing registrants. Specifically, the FMCSA uses its new applicant screening tool to identify matches against all existing motor carriers in the FMCSA's databases along various data fields such as company name, address, phone number, applicant name, etc. FMCSA uses this analysis to determine next steps, including denying applications and pursuing further enforcement action. With that in mind, what exactly happens to chameleon carriers? Well, the FMCSA's regulations set out the process the agency follows when it elects to pursue chameleon carriers. Section 386.73F requires the FMCSA to initiate a formal proceeding by issuing a written order that either places the carrier out of service or consolidates its records, or both. Carriers who receive such an order can petition the agency for administrative review by filing a petition with the agency's assistant administrator. If timely filed, that petition kicks off an administrative review process involving legal briefing and argument to the assistant administrator, who will ultimately make a final determination based on the record. If the purported chameleon carrier fails to challenge an agency order or loses on appeal, the order will become effective, and this will lead to either the carrier being placed out of service or its USDOT records, including any negative compliance history, being consolidated with its affiliated carriers. All right, that's going to wrap things up for this video. For even more in-depth information about these types of regulatory issues and major aspects of the federal and state safety regulations, be sure to check out our innovative online compliance courses for safety managers and drivers over at trucksafeacademy.com. Also, be sure to check out our detailed compliance articles on our website at trucksafe.com and follow us on our various social media pages for the latest highway transportation news and analysis. Thanks for watching.